Right, bear with. Okay. Right, first of all, housekeeping is that I'm just going to mute you all right now. I wish I could do that in my actual life. I bet you all, especially all of you that are mums, or who've got someone annoying in your house, I bet you'd all like to do that. Anyway, if you want to say anything during the session this evening, just unmute yourself and ask the question as we're working. So we won't have a time at the end for questions. I mean, there is, but it's better, I think, to just ask the question as I'm doing the work. Loads of you are beginners. Don't feel like any question is silly, just ask, because there's loads of beginners always on these workshops, and there's loads of people watching this as a video. So it's really important to ask those questions if I've not made something clear. We've also got loads of pros here too, and they're quite often really brilliant for answering questions. So everybody sort of pipes in and has a little answer. So that's one thing. If you've got any technical questions, my Chief Technical Advisor, Gav, is in the chat box. So if you're having any problems, just click on the chat box and you can type a little message to him, and you can also type messages to your friends if you've got little friends on the call and you haven't seen them for a while. I know some of you are doing it communally with a group and you're all individual in your own individual homes. So that's really nice to do. Other housekeeping. So it's up to you how you work today. Some people like to work alongside me. There'll be a point on this session where you can't go any further because you'll be waiting for ink and paint to dry, in which case you might just have to keep watching me. Some people like to just watch and then work at their own pace in their own time, and that's absolutely fine too. So just do what you feel you fancy this evening. I think that was everything I needed to say.
One more. Okay.
Sorry, say that.
Is it okay that I'm in pyjamas?
Oh, I usually say that, don't I?
No, well,
it is okay that you're in your pyjamas.
Thank you.
Like normal, I've got my posh top on and my necklace to make it not look like I've got my pyjama bottoms on, but I have too. You know, we have to have some benefits of these lockdown meetings, don't we? And that's definitely one of them. I'm hoping some of you have taken your bras off too, just really relaxing. So first of all, I've just got something I need to play to you, which is that in my strange creative head, I have theme tunes for projects that I do. Message in the box. Who's this one? This is the theme tune for tonight. Oh, enough of that. Pipe down, Dolly. Back in your box. This was the other one that popped into my head. Right, that's enough of that. Mainly Dolly, I think. She needs to be our mascot for tonight. So normally when I do Sketchbook Club in person, I create this sensory environment of little bits of music, scented candles, nice tea and coffee and stuff to eat. So I can't really do that. And I think you'd get annoyed if I kept playing Dolly all night. So I'll leave that with you to have that playing in your head because it's a bit of an earworm. And we'll carry on with this project. So bear with me while I just swap to my other camera and extinguish my lighting. Right. There we go. It should switch itself on in a minute. Oh. That helps. There we go. Hope you can see that all right, everybody. My light back on. Okay, hang on a minute. Sorry, Chief Technical Advisor's just strobing now.
Yeah, it is. That one's okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah, it focuses better.
Okay. I hope that's all right for everybody. So message in the box to Gav if there's any problems, because he can then just relay it to me because I'm not looking at the screen. So loads of options for tonight. This is a sketchbook page of Typewriters. So this might be something that you feel like you fancy doing this evening. Actually, it takes a bit longer than a couple of hours. Let's just zoom in so you can see some details. But this could be an option. Some people are sketchbookers and they like to fill sketchbook pages with a few layouts. So this could be an option. Another option is if you make a little pop-up book, which is the thing that was really popular with my group today. So that's these little ones. And it's done on a little box hinge. It's really simple. I'll show you how to do it. The nice thing about working like this is that you can just work on little bits of paper, and if you get a few rubbish ones, you can chuck them away and just cut out the good ones, which is what I always like to do. It takes the pressure off if you're a bit nervous. So I've got loads of little teeny tiny typewriters here. Just got them coming up my ears, and a massive one, look, big giant one. We've got all sorts of things coming out of them. So you could do some found poetry, you could stamp or type or write a little film quote. You could do some song lyrics or some poetry or an inspirational motivational quote for a friend. So that might be something, as well as Dolly Parton, that's ticking away in the back of your head whilst we're doing this project. So like I said, the project does require a bit of drying time, and I'm going to really rattle through it so that I get all the information in through this video. So don't worry if you can't keep up. You'll get the video recording, so it means that you can just catch up on the last few bits. So you've got a couple of references here. Just pop back out again. Sorry, bear with me a minute.
Was that intentional, Lucia, finding one that said Corona on it?
I know, yeah, it was. Yeah, so I've got some images. I haven't got a colour printer, so these are, you've probably got a colour version of this if you have, but they are all pretty colours, and there's some black ones on there too. And then there's some illustrations that other artists have done, and this is going to help us solve some of our visual problems by having a look at how other artists have solved the problems of typewriters. The problem being that typewriters, to start off with, look a bit complicated. There's loads of furniture to deal with. I think that's what it's called, all the little bits, type furniture. But I just want to show you something. You don't have to do this. It's just for me to demonstrate a point. I'm going to put a piece of tracing paper over this typewriter and show you what shape it is. If I just drew a shape that covered it, look, it's not the hardest shape in the world to do, it's just a square. So in theory, if on our sketchbooks you just drew a square, that would be a great starting point for your typewriter. And generally, when you're drawing something, looking for a large familiar shape is a really great place to start, because it means that you can create that bold shape and then reduce it down into smaller shapes. So the next sort of largest shape here is this top part of the typewriter, and it's about, if I put a line there and a line there, I think that that is about halfway. So I'm literally going to just divide that in half like that. And then I can add some more lines, look. There's another little line there. And I'm not, I'm staying out the way, I'm staying out the shadow, so I'm not being particularly precise about it, but generally I'm not very precise anyway. Another large shape is this part here, the open part that holds the keys. So I'm just gonna, and that's just another rectangle, look. So I'm not adding any of the fancy I'm not adding any of the fancy little bits. I'm literally just putting in some big shapes. I want to get this fan shape in as well, and that's pretty central. Actually, that wasn't very well done. I think that's up a bit higher. So it goes to about there. I've got that little box there. Now, for some of you who are experienced drawers, this might be enough now to feel confident about going in with pen. All the big shapes are there, and you can start working away and adding details with ink. The less experience you've got with drawing, the more details you might feel more confident about using a pencil to add some of those in. So if you look, this isn't quite square. We've got a curving shape there. So I'm going to curve that top part. These are sort of doing observational drawings, but we're doing it in an illustrative way. So if things aren't quite right, it doesn't matter. We're just looking for a feel of a typewriter. We want someone to be able to identify as a typewriter, and they're fun. So if you've got wobbly bits in your typewriter, don't worry about it. I'm going to just add a bit more shape here. I'm going to just add where that space bar is. I'm pushing quite hard on my pencil so that you can see, but it might be better for you guys to do this lightly. Sorry, I should have said that at the beginning. Makes it easier to rub out. I think that's kind of enough for me at this stage. Actually, I might just draw how many lines of keys there are. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of keys. So I'm just going to stick in 4 lines just to guide me of where to put the keys. And really that is, I'm just zoom in a minute. So that's enough. That's a really rough little sketch. So the next stage now is to add in a bit of pen work. I'm going to just have my illustrative example nearby me too. And I've got some waterproof fine liners. I've got quite a thick one. So that's a 0.8 nib. And and I've got a 0.2, which is a much thinner nib. The lower the number, the smaller the nib. I'm also going to be doing this demo with a dip nib and some waterproof ink. So we're just going to have a go with the fine liners first. But if you're just using a dip nib, then we'll go through that in a minute. So I'm picking up my larger size one first, and I'm going to go in and just go around those lines, thicken them up a little bit, and colour in a few sections which are blacker in area, so where the little type keys are. So there are some bits where we've got lines that are going to be useful to rub them out. So I'm just thinking that little section there. I don't know any parts of a typewriter apart from a space bar. So where I'm going to call these the type arms, the ones that have got little letters on them, when they come up there, this is a negative gap. I'm going to rub that out. I'm going to add now a little bit of detail. maybe just a couple of the little type arms because I want to add some in thin. So this little part here, which I've learned from the afternoon group who were helping me when we were Googling typewriter parts. This black part is called a cylinder. I thought it was a roller or a platen. I'm doing curved, so I have to put my specs on. I can't actually see what I'm doing. Oh, that's better. I'm colouring it in, but I'm sort of curving the stroke. And then where there are areas of non-black, I'm getting a slightly curved stroke. A lot of this bit we're going to be covering with paper, but it's still important to have a bit poking through, and it's going to help it look authentic. Lots of you there, I know, are really keen on fine liner work and will do a much nicer, neater job than this. It's really nice to take your time with a fine liner and add really slow details. They're easy to use because we're so used to using a pen. They're not wobbly like a brush. And you can get these lovely chunks of dark tone. And what this is going to do is act like a skeleton, a really, really strong skeleton underneath some very loose watercolour work. And it's basically going to hold it all up. So that's there. Right, I'm nearly ready to add my keys in a minute, I think. Add a bit of a base on there. Just to colour that in as well. You can always go back and add little bits. And like I said, this is a nice bit I'm whizzing through just to get this done so you can see. But it's nice to really take your time with the fine liner work. For those of you that have done Zentangling, there's a similar principle going on here whereby we're adding some thick line, loads of areas of contrast, as most of you know that I really like in my work. We're adding thick line here, and one of the contrasts is that we're now going to use thin pen to add some finer details. So it's going to create a really lovely visual contrast between the very thick line and the very thin line. So I hope you can see that. I'll just refocus a little bit. It's hard to see those tiny little thin lines, but I hope you get the gist. It doesn't matter if they're a little bit wonky, as long as they're done with purpose. The wonky is good, and it really adds to the character of the typewriter. But I'm making sure that they hit from one side to the other of the line solidly, so there's no little white gaps in there. So I can really refine, I can add little borders. If there's little details and signage and labels on the typewriter, these thin pens can be used to add that, and these little parts on the, what would that be called, the cylinder knob. Right, I might just add a bit of shading down here as well. Already my eye starts to get really excited about this visual tension between thick lines and thin lines. I just love it. Well, it's the thing that makes us love looking at things like beautiful lettering. It puts on a little theatre performance for our brain. And it's like a little Broadway show. We're not getting to see very many performances at the moment, are we? So the best we can do is make our pen perform for us. Okay, so now I've got the problem of the keys, which potentially could be the most complicated thing. But if you look on the illustrator sheet, so this is loads of illustrations that I've collected off of Pinterest, just to look and see how other people have tackled this problem. So let me just pop back out again. So you've probably all got this in front of you, and there's some really simple solutions like this one here, where literally the solution is just drawing circles. So they're not connected to anything, but they look really effective. There's a few more here, look, just stems. So there's literally just sticks, lines coming out the bottom of the buttons. Looking at the buttons, they're just circles, or they are little squares. This one is really cute. I just love the double line that goes on back to connect it to the typewriter. And those are like little ticks underneath each button. So that I'm going to just use that idea, and also they've got all different number buttons. There's a different quantity on each row. So I'm not going to be too picky, because I'm not being really authentic with my typewriter, but I know there's lots of people here that have come on this workshop because they love typewriters and they're very authentic, in which case you must stand your ground and create an authentic typewriter. But I'm just going to steal bits of other typewriters to build my typewriter. So it might not have the right buttons for that make, but they are just lots of little squiggly circles. You can see they're really wonky, and I'm going to do a very wonky space bar. So that was with my thick one, and I'm going back in with my thin little pen again. And I'm going to add a little lip underneath each of the buttons. And then maybe there's that little connection. But you must pick and choose what you think would be nice. And the nice thing about this is that you can experiment. So you can just, for each typewriter, pinch a different shape. So choose the shape of one and the buttons of another, and the return lever handles. These are really lovely, of another one. One lady in the afternoon group today had flowers coming out of her typewriter. That looks really beautiful. Could have a story coming out of it. There's so many things you can do. So I think that's pretty much most of my pen work on this one. Like I said, I think if I was, I'd like to take my time over it a bit more. I like to just, when I get to this stage, just have a bit of a fiddle around with it, put a little bit of shading in the background there. Just doing that with my thin pen. Again, I'm doing this quickly. Do it, if you haven't got loads of experience, do it slowly and methodically, and take your time and do some really beautiful firm lines. So we'll make this a royale. That's a bit of writing there. So that's option one. I'm just going to move that along. And whilst you're working on that, I'm going to just draw out another little typewriter just in rough. And then I can demo how to do this with pen and ink. So I'm just using the same principle again of creating an outline that I can rub out later. It's just giving me something to work. And like I said, the more experience you've got with drawing, the less guidelines you put, the more sort of messy and effective the typewriter looks, I think. But again, it does depend on your creative personality. And we talked about this a bit last week, about how it's important to sort of test yourself a little bit and try and do things a bit differently. Ultimately, if you're a very neat person and you love doing things very neatly, then these typewriters will reflect your style. I'm quite messy and impatient generally.
That looks like a face. Timmy the
It
typewriter.
does, doesn't it? I was thinking that about this little one here. I thought that's like a little smiley face.
Definitely.
Yeah, so the more you do drawing wise and getting it down, it becomes your drawing on top becomes a bit less spontaneous, but it is a good safety net. So the more typewriters you do, and the more confident you get, the less under drawing you could do. It's really good. I like to try and just draw them freehand with pen and ink, and you never quite know where the lines go, and I do a lot of my drawings like that, and I just go over lines that go wrong and I just draw on top of it, and again and again and again. But again, that's the way I work, and it doesn't suit everybody. So we're going to go in with some waterproof pen and ink now. So I'm fully aware of all you calligraphers on here that know everything about nibs, nib holders and ink, but it's really important that I talk about this for a few of you who haven't used ink before. So I've got a nib and a nib holder here. It's a pointed nib. This is a manga nib, a Nico G. Any pointed nib is going to work really well for doing some really loose and expressive drawing. So if you've got a copper plate nib, a modern calligraphy nib, a mapping or drawing nib, anything, just have a go. You will probably receive it separately. So you'll have a nib separate from your pen holder. And if you have a little look in your pen holder, you'll see there's some little petals. Your nib needs to fit outside the petal between the rim of the pen holder. So you can see if I put it on its side there, it's not stuck in the center. It's stuck along, it's squished in along the side, tucked in. And when you push your nib in, because it's quite sharp, just have a piece of kitchen roll and push it down with a piece of kitchen roll until it won't go any further. And then it's there. It shouldn't move, and when you push it like that, it shouldn't pop out.
I've got a kit, sorry, from when I did my calligraphy with you, and that which I haven't opened. And I'm looking at the 3 nibs now, and I think they've got numbers on, I think. Does that tell me what they are?
They're just different brands of pointed nib, Lou, so it doesn't really matter which one you use. It does help if the nib is reasonably firm. So if you push against the 2 tips of one of your nibs, you might find that some are firmer than others. Okay. If you're a beginner drawer, it can be helpful to have a nib that's quite firm because you get a bit more control over it.
Thank you.
Okay. So the other thing to tell you is if you've got a brand new nib, you need to just run it through a lighter, just a flame like this. It's not going to work now. There we go. Just pass it through a flame very briefly, and then the wax coating that's on it will just be burnt off, and it's a waterproof coating. So if you keep the coating on, you dip it in the ink, all the ink's going to come off and it's going to go everywhere. So that's a top tip. You can put them in your mouth and suck off the coating. The saliva breaks it down, but you can cut your tongue. And you can put them in potatoes as well, and the starch will take off the coating. But I think probably the lighter, or just putting it through a tea light, is the best option for one of these. The other thing just to tell you is that some of these little pens that you can buy do have a reservoir on the back, like a little piece of metal on the back. most pointed nibs have a slot on the front which acts as a reservoir. So when you dip it in your ink, you don't need to dip it all the way in right up to the handle. You just need to make sure that the reservoir, the little slot on the front, is dipped in the ink, and then that will hold a little bit of ink for your drawing. So you can see that little slot there. When you push down onto the back of your nib, the two tines will open and they're connected to the reservoir. So every time you press your pen down, they will open more. If you don't put any pressure on your nib, you'll get a very thin line. When you press down more, the tines will open and more ink will be released, so you'll get a thicker line. So you can get then a very expressive line by just adding more or less pressure. For those of you that have done calligraphy before, you'll be aware of pressing on the downstroke. When we're drawing, because we're not creating lettering, you can press down anytime you want. So generally you can't press down on the upstroke, but you can kind of have a combination of pressure and release just to get a really lovely and expressive line. So I've got some waterproof ink. This is absolutely bulletproof waterproof ink of D. Atramentis, which is one of my favourite inks to use. There's a lot of really good waterproof inks on the market. I just make sure the lid's on and give it a little shake. And I've got that beside me. You obviously need the waterproof ink if you're going to stick on some watercolour over the top, because we don't want the ink to run. If you haven't got waterproof ink, still have a go at doing this, and then just perhaps ink in some of the dark areas rather than use watercolour. So you can still have a go at doing this. You can also, on a bit of paper, just have a little play with some of the marks that you can get with your pen. So that's a really nice thing to do in a sketchbook. So, you know, just seeing what a thin line will do, what happens if you press and release. How can you get hatching, doing some little sort of flicks, basically just having a play and doing some mark making can give you a bit of confidence before you go in with your pen. I'm just going to launch in. I've got previous with pens and nibs and ink, so hopefully it'll be all right. Yeah, so I'm going to be really free, and what this is going to do is, in this nib I've got a thick and a thin pen, so we swapped pens on the other one. But with pressing and releasing, I'm getting that lovely, I'm creating my own visual tension in these lines. What you can do is create it with a very thin line, first of all, and then add some thick lines by just going back over some of the lines, adding a bit more ink. If you're going in inky, I can tell you now that this ink will take a little while to dry, so there's definitely no watercolour at this stage with this ink, unless you've got your hairdryer and give it a blow dry. I just feel like this is the right medium to be drawing these little typewriters. So look, I'm doing the buttons of this typewriter just like joined up O's. Very expressive. So I can push down and then release like an O, or go back the other way and get the thick part on the other side. Generally, as with calligraphic lettering, you know, the pressure on the downstroke does work better. Don't go against the grain on it, unless you want lots of sort of splattering. That could be nice. An inky mess. I think this is a really nice, oh, I've forgotten my space bar. a really nice tool to begin drawing and lettering with, because it's really freeing. What should we do there? Next term, we're going to do some drawing sessions and expressive drawing and blind contour. And we're going to do loads of different tools and stuff as well. And so this, having a dip nib is a really great way of loosening up your drawing. Again, really nice because you can just bring in those tiny, thin little lines. There's only a few things that I think I could just keep drawing all the time. And typewriters, one of them. Typewriters and houses. Maybe I could draw a typewriter in a house. So when I was a little girl, I used to play a game with my friend called Mrs. Dickens and Mrs. Jones. And she was Mrs. Dickens and I was Mrs. Jones. And we were working in an office together in my bedroom, which was set up on boxes. And we both had electric typewriters and one of those old credit card machines and telephones. And I would ring her and say, oh, hello, Mrs. Dickens. And she'd say, hello, Mrs. Jones. Could you put that document through, please? And then she would type the document and then put it through. And we had carbon paper. Remember that, everybody? Carbon paper stolen from my dad's study. And so we do it in duplicate and triplicate. And the great thing about it was that nobody had to be the customer. I don't quite know what I've done here. I think I might colour that in black. Nobody had to be the customer, and that's what nobody wanted to be. We also had a travel agent. Well, I had a travel agent, Mrs. Jones, and Mrs. Dickens had a hotel, which meant that I could book people into her hotel. That was one of my favourite games to play. Offices and post offices and libraries, but all of them involved a really old electric typewriter that my dad had, and all my friends were jealous. I'm kind of making up this typewriter now. I've got a very posh pen holder here, which is, I think it's turned walnut. And I actually bought it from the charity shop in my local town in Wootton for £1.50. And it was on the shelf with a load of rusty old nibs sellotaped to it, but the handle was really beautiful. And I took it, I thought I'm definitely going to have that. I took it up to the lady, and this is a brilliant charity shop in Wootton because it's like a little community group of women that run it. And one of them is called Pammy and one of them is called Shirley, and they both got their dogs in there, and one sits on the counter and the other sits in the back helping sorting. For those of you that follow me on Instagram, I did draw Pammy's dog who was watching all the sorting, because I just love this charity shop. And I took it up to the counter, this, and the lady said, oh, what are you buying that for? And I said, because it's for lettering and I like lettering. Oh, we wondered what that was, me and Shirley. You do like bubble writing and that with it? And I said, well, not so much bubble write. And she shouted then to Shirley, here, Shirley, this this woman does bubble writing with these pens. That's what they're for. I said to you they were for bubble writing. So now I'm known, unfortunately, in this charity shop as that lady what does the bubble writing. Anyway, we're not doing bubble writing today. We haven't done bubble writing for many years, but perhaps that could be another little lockdown workshop. A blast from the past, like the typewriters.
Lucia, what do you mean by bubble writing?
Can you, oh, is that Mariette?
Yes, sorry.
Maybe because you're from the Netherlands, aren't you?
Yes, yeah.
Maybe you did not have bubble writing in your schools as you were growing up, but it was like so it's when you basically do, hang on, I'm going to have to do a demonstration now. It's what all school children do. When you do a poster.
Sorry about that.
So you do like writing like this. So this would be bubble writing for my name.
Okay, I get it. Yeah, okay, I just didn't know that's what it was called. Thank you.
It's like the first type of lettering. So all of the things like the white elephant stall at the school fete would all be done in bubble writing. But yeah, that's what she related it to, that I was a professional bubble writer. Well, I suppose we all sort of are really if we're in the lettering arts, but I don't want to seem to be snobby and not include bubble writing in my repertoire of lettering. Okay, so I've done enough for my little blotchy inky one. Just to remember, if you are, well, obviously rinse your nib off any time that you're using ink, but particularly if you're using waterproof ink. I've got a little pot of water, I've given it a swish, and I've got a bit of kitchen roll. I'm just giving it a wipe off. I'm a serial nib abuser, so but I really try hard with the document ink, and I have to make a conscious decision and have a little word with myself and say, rinse your nib. And you can give it a really proper good scrub with a little old toothbrush under a tap, but just to get the most of it off. Okay, so I'm just going to, that inky one is still really wet, so I'm just going to snip these in half. Like I said, you might just feel happy now, just pottering away with your typewriters and just sketching some out in your sketchbook or sketching them out on a piece of paper. But I'm going to whiz on through the colour. Don't feel you need to rush, but it means that we get it all in the vid. So I'm just going to show you this little sheet. Now, some of you have got this sheet. It's available for free on my website as a download, but I'll include it with the email tomorrow, so you can print it out if you want to, but if you've already got it, then have a little look at it. It's useful because you can use it for lots of colour combinations. The thing that works really well with these little typewriters is using a split harmonious complementary system. So that sounds complicated, it's really not. The most simple thing you can do when you're painting something with watercolour is just to paint it one colour. That's it, with any paint really. And that's a very easy colour combination, but quite unsophisticated and not quite as interesting. A harmonious colour combination is when you pick one primary colour and then you choose up to 5 colours that are next to joining that primary colour, and you can go any way. So say our primary colour is yellow, the harmonious choices to go with that would be the colours connected to it going clockwise, or the colours connected to it going anti-clockwise. So those colours are always going to go with yellow, and you can go up to 5 colours. Some people just tend to use 3. The other thing I'm going to do, so this is a split complementary system here. So I'm going to choose yellow for my typewriter. And so I'm kind of going to go yellow and orange and red. I'm going to go this direction. But I'm also going to just use one colour on the opposite side. So I'm going to just drop in a blue as well. So whatever colour system you choose, choose a few connecting colours and then choose one colour from the other side just to drop in. So I'll do a demo of that now, but like I said, it's a really easy system, and it means that whatever you do using this harmonious system will always look good, I promise. So here we go. Oh, one other thing I better do first of all is, once all your ink is completely dry, you can obviously just go in and rub out all your pencil lines, and then it looks to the viewer like you've just gone straight in with ink. So that's a nice cheat, isn't it? And it looks like you're a highly confident ink user. And I really think that art and illustration is full of these little tricks, isn't it, really? It's just about not telling anybody what your tricks are. So I'm telling you, obviously, but don't tell anyone else. Don't tell the people that tell you that your typewriter looks really good. Don't tell them how you did it. And that it was just a square to start with. Okay. So here's my warm section of my watercolour palette. Warm and a little bit grubby. Whoops, I don't want my inky water. I've got some clean water there. And I've got really quite a big paintbrush. You don't need a little paintbrush for this job, because we're just literally going to slap it on. Remember that I said before that this dark pen structure is like our skeleton, so we can literally just drop and throw ink on it, watercolor on it, and it's going to hold up whatever we put on it. So I'm just going to mix up my harmonious color system now, dipping in the water, grabbing some watercolor and popping it onto the palette. Adding more water to it is going to make that paint thinner and more transparent. The less water you add to it, the brighter and vibrant it will be, but it also won't mix as well. So the clue is in the name, watercolor. So keep adding a nice, so you've got a nice sort of sloshy, painty consistency. So there's the yellow. I'm going to go for an orange. So that was part of that harmonious color system. Actually, and I've got this kind of, well, it's a kind of a mixture between the two. It's like a warm yellow, yellowy orange. If you're using them out of the straight out of the palette, feel free just to give them a little mix together. So I might just pick a little bit of red and add it into that orange. And it just makes the colour a bit more sophisticated and more complex as it dries. You've just got a couple of pigments there that start to separate in the drying process. Okay, I'm going to go on in with my yellow. Let's just go a bit closer, just so you can see how slapdash my approach is. There you go, that's that side painted. It's a bit like the first stage of the leaves that we did last week, where I'm just touching the paper with the watercolour. I'm rinsing off my brush now and picking up another colour. So one of these oranges, and again, just touching and doing a little bit of mixing on the paper. But when the water connects between the two colours, it will start to mingle and get to know each other. And as it dries, they do their own thing, and the more you can leave them, the more exciting it is. So this is always very tricky with the camera, because you get the shine, but you can see, I've just stuck those two colours and you can see them slightly separate but still together. The shine is also good because you can see how wet the paper is. So wherever you get this lovely sort of glazy shine, it means you can read the water. It means you can just add another colour and drop it in and know that it's wet enough that it will create a soft edge. and a soft mixture. When you don't get that shine, you'll get a more detailed hard edge, which can be useful if you want to add detail, but we want a little bit of a mix here. Now we've got our warm colours in, so the colour on the opposite side of the colour wheel was a blue. So I'm using a colour called cobalt blue. I've got some quite nice blues in my palette. And I'm just going to touch that blue in. I might just stick a bit around there. I'm not mixing it too much, again, just touching a few areas. But when we were talking about line contrast, we've got that, that's our first element of contrast. And this combined colour combination is our second area of contrast. So we've got two aspects of really visual, visually dynamic work that is going to excite the eyes of the viewer. Sorry about the shine again, but again, you can see how wet mine was there. So you can see all that mix. I'm hoping that these are going to mix in a little bit more. I start to get a bit anxious when they go like that and then think I've got to sort of muddle them in a bit with my brush. I'm going to do it, but if I was, I'll just see, let's see, that might, I might have done the wrong thing. I'm going to leave that to dry. But I have got, in true Blue Peter style, one that I've done earlier that is dry already. Here he is. So that was our first glaze, this one. Just to add a bit more, when watercolour is wet, it's much more vibrant, and then it usually dries about 3 times paler than it is when you put it on wet. So you quite often then get a slight dulling of the watercolours. So just go back in with your colours. Now, confusingly, this is obviously a different set of colours. I was sort of blue and purples on this one. So I'm just remixing a couple of my colours. Turn my palette around so you can see. And by putting this second layer of watercolour on, if you imagine watercolour is transparent, it's like putting 2 layers of tissue paper on, and your top layer is obviously going to be affected by your bottom layer. It's going to be stronger. And just add a little bit more punch. So it's a really useful technique in watercolour. You can add this at when you learn to read the water and it's not really soaking wet, but it's still a bit damp, you can add this. But it's, I would say that it's quite, you feel like you've got a bit of control doing it this way. So like I said, I'm just going to add a bit of definition. And then this, again, this is another layer of contrast. Perhaps a few of those areas that didn't get as much paint before, perhaps on a space bar. Doesn't matter if you go over the edge because we're going to cut these out. If you've got a really tiny paintbrush and you want to add little details and little shading, a more detailed painting, this stage, this second glaze, is the sort of time to do it. I'm just going to go big with these. So if you wanted to paint little buttons in and things, you could do that with a tiny brush. I've just realised I haven't done the little top, what's it called? Carriage return. might want to add a bit of detail in there, a bit of shadow in some little bits, but I'm not, you can see I'm not being very precious with that at all. So that would just be my second layer, my second glaze. Some typewriters just don't need it. So you might find that you've done one layer and you're really happy with it. This has just got one layer on, this one, and I really like how the colours have mixed with that one. You, like me, might be the sort of person that just keeps going and going and going until it's completely ruined. I'm really good at that. So it's hard to know when to stop. But if you've got a really nice colour mix and it's really bold and bright, just stop there.
So is that is the paint in the second layer thicker or the same thickness?
I usually go a tiny bit thicker. It depends on how detailed you, so if you're doing quite a lot of detailed work, perhaps you've got a little thin paintbrush and you want to add little sort of shadows under the ribbons or just on the cylinder knob, then go, if the more detail, the more concentrated I think the paint needs to be for that one.
And that's on watercolor paper.
Oh, this is on watercolor paper, yeah. Equally thicker sketchbook paper. So I quite often do this in my sketchbooks, which have just got heavyweight cartridge paper in. As long as it's got a little bit of tooth to it, I think. You can do it on cheap card, but it's quite often a bit too shiny. So this is, I really like hot pressed paper for this kind of sketchy stuff, and hot pressed means it's really smooth. So there are lots of watercolor papers that have got much more texture, like Knot, which is a cold pressed paper, or a rough paper. But if you've got this sketchy element, it works really well if you've got very nice smooth paper that's a joy to work on, especially with a pointed nib. You're obviously going to really catch the nib. If you want lots of splatters, that would be quite good. Okay, so I'm going to pop those aside, and I'm aware probably a lot of you aren't painting your typewriters now. They might all be a bit damp, or those of you that have got to the watercolor stage, that they are really wet and drying. So you might need to get your hair dryers out. I do that sometimes. So what we're going to do now is just going to do this little type section of it, which is really easy to do. And again, I've got one that I made earlier, but can I find it? No. It's all cut out and everything. Just this tiny little workspace that I've got, trying to fit everything in. Don't know where that's gone. Oh well. We'll work with one of these. We'll try it with this one. Oh, this one, look, because that one was already dry. So for the little piece of paper, I'm just going to draw, I mean, you could basically draw a rectangle for a piece of paper. You can go a bit flashy pants and do sort of curved lines so the paper looks like it's coming out curved. So we could try that. So I'm just going from the edge of the cylinder, and then I do a bit of a curved line. And then mirror it. I'm not putting a top, maybe I'll put a little top bit on just so I've got a general idea. It depends, you could have a piece sort of splaying out like that. I've got on this one some very fancy sort of squiggly paper coming out of this one. But drawing it out just very lightly on your typewriter, so they've got a curved one here. Another curving one. Just drawing it out, try a simple one first. And then what you need to do is pop a piece of tracing paper over your typewriter and your paper shape and trace the shape again. So follow the lines. Like I said, this top line is very open and adjustable, so I'm not worrying too much about that. I'm going right down to the roller. And now what I want to do is, let's go right in on this. Looking through, I'm gonna, wherever that I think that paper might lie, I'm just gonna trace the edge of the typewriter where the paper is gonna sit. So that's the most important edge, this little bottom bit. Remove your typewriter. And then, so another little an early preparation. So here I've got some type that I typed up on my little old 1960s Royale typewriter. But you could equally use little stamp sets. You could use old book pages or cut out words from newspaper and stick them down on another piece of paper. And then, or just do a bit of lettering and then hold your piece over your piece of tracing paper, and it means you can now adjust, you can see through where your type's gonna be and move your paper accordingly. So I had some really nice little bits in a book about typewriting. So the same works if you've just got a bit of book page. Look, you can move the paper around, getting the little pieces of information that are important in the right place. So that's the quote that I want, which is some song lyrics. I want to, it's going to have to fit in a bit of a wonky angle, is it? Oh no, it'll fit like that. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, what you need to do, actually I'm going to just snip the edge off of that paper to make it a bit easier to hold. And snip roughly your, that'll be better. I'll just check I've got that the right way round. Yep. So pop it over your paper. And pinning your paper, your two layers of paper together with your thumb. Sorry, this is still a bit big. You have to sort of keep moving it around. You're just going to cut. Now, like I said, it doesn't matter this top part because we're going to fold it over, so that can be quite rough. But the part that connects to your typewriter is really important. We want this curve to be nice. So I'm pinning all the time. I'm not really good at cutting things out, so I think if I can do this, you definitely can. I'm a bit cack-handed with a pair of scissors. But the most important thing is that I'm holding it with my thumb and I'm moving the paper so that I've got this little join that's going to connect to my typewriter. I don't know if any of you have done the drawing with scissors workshop, that as an online workshop that the London Drawing Group have done, and it's really lovely. I think you can buy it online, and it's all about Matisse and the way that he produced his work and that he drew with scissors, and he just had great big scissors, and it was like he was creating sculpture out of the pieces of paper that he was cutting. It was really lovely. Anyway, I sort of had a little Matisse moment there. So you can lose that piece of tracing paper now, and you should have a piece that will fit. You might need to rub your pencil lines out, but it will fit into that typewriter section. I'm going to, because I've got a rough piece of lettering there, so if you've got an extra bit of paper on the end, it means you can fold it over. And it looks, again, you've got a nice little 3D element. It looks like you've got a piece of folded paper there. So I'm going to just cut, before I stick it on, cut out my typewriter to start with. Again, cack-handed. They're not too tricky to cut out. And it means that all those little bits of paint that you got round the outside, you can sort of carve them off again. Now this piece of paper, it we used as a template, so we're going to be sticking that on. You don't need it all, so I just sort of snip a bit of it off. So I just thought I've got something to connect the little piece of typing paper to. So again, I'm just, as I'm cutting, I'm turning. There we go. And then a bit of glue. Stick that little back bit down. And glue that into place. So I'm hoping I've got it in the right place. I have to wiggle it around a little bit. And then I would suggest, even if you did your typewriter with pen and ink with a dip nib, that you bring in your little standard fine liner. Quite often the paper can be absorbent if you've used old paper like I have. And then draw in the bits of furniture that are missing. And this will connect the piece of paper back to the typewriter. And again, it's one of those little things that people start looking at it and thinking, well, how have they done that then? We had a discussion earlier today about whether you could, with a craft knife, cut a little slot and slot a piece of paper down in, which you probably could do. I think it would be harder cutting around the shape, which is why we're sort of sticking straight on. There we go. So that's our little typewriter finished. So, like I said, if you missed all of that bit, don't worry, because you'll get the vid and that will fill you in on that last little bit. It's a great technique for adding other sections. You know, little collaged pieces, and if you've like decorated dresses and curtains in collage or illustrated houses, you can use the same technique. So let's pop that out again, and I'm just going to show you how to create the little pop-up. Now I realised earlier today that I hadn't sent you, well, I hadn't written instructions for a pop-up, and it probably would have been really helpful. So I've written some instructions really quickly today, and I'll send them with the video link. But what I'd just like to show you is the cutting card bit, because it's really easy. So this is a piece of A4 card, and you could cut down the length, so you've got 2 pieces of paper, or you could just sort of divide it widthwise. And this is to create the outside part for the pop-up. So you just need 2 pieces of card that are the same size. If you look, the typewriter needs to be a bit shorter than your card, because when you close it up, it pushes the typewriter up. So you don't want it sticking out the top like mine is there. And if they're really massive, they'll stick right out the top. So this option of cutting lengthways down a piece of A4 means you get 2 really long pieces of card, and you can just trim them then to fit your typewriter. So I'll send you that, but I'll just show you on the vid what I've got going on. So you need to decorate one of your pieces of card. So you could go really crazy inky, like I've done here. You could stamp letters over it. You could stick little collage bits of newspaper, paint effects, recycle bits of old watercolor paper, anything, just so that you've got one piece of card which is decorated, and that's going to be your background. And then I've got another piece which is just plain, and that's going to be the outside part of my card. On your inside patterned piece, fold it over so that the pattern is on the inside. And then with a ruler, she says, when ruler's gone missing, I can just show you anyway, I've marked halfway on the card. So it's 10 centimeters, this little bit of card. So at 5 centimeters, I've made a mark halfway. I've then marked 1 centimeter one side and 1 centimeter the other side to the halfway line. So I've got 2 centimeters in total there. I've measured 2 centimeters down both sides. So I've basically got a 2 by 2 centimeter box. So now all you do is cut down these 2 lines. So I'll cut it on here to the edge of the box. And you can, oh, that is my ruler, it's right in front of me. You can just put your ruler along that little line, and with a blunt butter knife or the edge of a pair of scissors, just create a little bit of a score. And then when we open it out, you can just pop that out, fold your card in. So I'm trying to get it in the right angle for the camera, and push it down. And then you get this little kind of chunk out of the card. And then when you pop it up, that's your little pop-up section where your typewriter is going to sit. I've done the same on this one, look. Just push that through. This one is harder when you've got collaged paper on, so that's a tip. It's easier if you've decorated the actual paper. So what you do then is glue onto one side. So you could do this with, you can buy greetings card blanks. So you could just use 2 of those with the same thing. But I did on one of the examples cut this inside panel slightly smaller, and then I had a little border which looked quite pretty. It's another nice experiment to do. And interestingly, next week's project with tea, you could combine this with the tea project next week. So you've got like a double whammy. So I've glued on that side. Here's my plain piece of card. Put gluey side down, and I'm just going to butt it up to the crease on the other card, making sure it's sort of even, sort of in the middle. Just close the card and give it a press down. And then I'm going to do the same on this side. I'm going to stick a piece of rough paper just in there, which means that I can glue it and it's not going to go over the edges and stick onto the table or onto the other side of the card. So just Pritt sticking it, which is adequate. And then just press that side over. Give it a rub. And then you can, on this side, you can put little bits of type and messages as well. And then you've got your folding card, your pop-up. So all that's left is to stick your little typewriter here. So I bet mine's not going to fit now. I'm going to I didn't measure it this one properly. Oh no, it's definitely not. I'm going to have to use a tinier one. So yeah, the longer your quote, the taller your typewriter will be. So just to give you an idea, these little typewriters, so that one is 4.5 centimetres. Actual typewriter, it's the same, about 5 centimetres, but obviously with that added, that's 10.5 centimetres. Depends on how big your quote is. So just a little bit of glue on the back of your typewriter or onto the thing, or you could use little sticky fixers or a little bit of double-sided tape. And that's your teeny tiny typewriter. It's such a simple pop-up. I'm really new to pop-ups, but I really like them because, well, I really liked pop-up books when I was little. I bet you all did too. There's something amazing about them, isn't there? So I'm going to be doing some more stuff with pop-ups because I'm a bit addicted. So I hope that's all right for you. Is there any questions? Because you've all been very quiet, especially you, Lou. That's not like you.
Well, I was watching rather than going along because once I'd done watercolour, that was it. I had to stop.
Well, yeah, exactly. And that's the same we found with the class this afternoon, that there was just a natural pause where we couldn't go any further if it's all wet.
I'll have a million questions when I actually do it myself, but that won't be in a class. So you'll get emails non-stop.
Well, hopefully watching back the video, it will sort of figure out some things for you.
Yes, I'm sure.
Yes. Okay. So I'll just quickly show you back again the sketchbook page, just so you've got it as a reference if you prefer to do it. So it's using the same technique for the paper. And you can obviously create a folded technique, but you're just sticking it down flat on the page. I've also added, and you might like to do this, I've got some cutout letters from old books. I've drawn a little ink bottle in the same way that I did the inky typewriter. I've stuck bits of paper down so it looks like it's an office. So Mrs. Dickens and Mrs. Jones, I feel right at home there. I've got biro and a pencil, same over on this page. I'm always keen to have a few fillers and odd little letters and pencils and ink and other things. So you could have type ribbon reels and I don't know, some type keys. I thought these looked a bit like type keys that were kind of falling out of the typewriter. And you could get really expressive and exciting about what's coming out of your typewriter. So it doesn't need to be quotes. It could be flowers, lettering with a story, a love letter, you know, it could be anything. Bits of cake could be flying out, leaves, anything. The other thing I did was I just splattered a bit of ink and watercolor on the sketchbook page, and I did some fingerprints of ink as well, because that's the thing I think about with typewriting. You have to get your fingers mucky if you're changing the type ribbon. So that is that, everybody. Before we just move on, just see how everybody's got going, before I switch my camera up, I just wanted to show you next week we've got tea bag books, so I just wanted to show you a little tea bag book. This is one of the things that we'll be making, but we're doing like loads of stuff. So a lesson in loving. So little tea bag books, and we are painting on tea bags. And we're doing loads of doodling. So we're doing mid-tone doodling as well of tea stained paper, teacup paper, more little tea bags, loads of stuff. But I wanted to show you that because all of the stuff that we do next week could be applied to this project too. So that's that. So I'm just going to switch off my camera. There we go, and I'm back with you. Hopefully you can see me. So if I pop you onto a gallery, is there anybody that feels like they fancy holding a little bit up so we could see? So you don't have to, but everybody does like to see. We've got Meg. I'm just spotlighting you, Meg. Oh, it's lovely. Gorgeous.
Wow.
Fantastic.
It's my mum's portable typewriter that her dad gave her. So we're going back to the
wow.
1910, 1930, something like that.
Oh my
Little
goodness.
empire.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Right, sorry, it's very manual going back to this. I've got Sarah. Oh, that's lovely, Sarah. Oh my goodness, the colours look fantastic.
I so enjoyed it. Thank you so much. It's absolutely fantastic.
That's a pleasure. Oh, they're really lovely. That's a great job.
Thank you.
Gorgeous. Who else have we got? Anna Marshall. Still got your jumper on, Anna? Oh, wow. Gosh, yours are very musical. Spouting out a load of music. Fantastic. They are lovely. And it's a piece typewriter.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
The one I was copying said, I can't remember what it said. It had a word on it, but I thought I'd write my own word.
Oh, they're lovely, Anna. Thank you. Right. Anyone? Oh, we've got Jay. Oh, that hit me in the face then, Jay. The Corona typewriter. Someone had to do it, didn't they? It's lovely. I love the colours you've used. It's cool. It's really tiny. How big is it, Jay? Yeah. What do you reckon? I think about 4 or 5 centimetres. Really little.
It's about 4 centimetres.
Yeah. It is teeny tiny.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's beautiful. Does that make us teeny tiny typists, even though we're not typing? Here we got Naughty Ali. Oh, crikey. Who's Naughty Ali? There she is. Hope you've not been naughty with what's coming out your typewriter. Oh, it's French again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gorgeous. Isn't that lovely? I love the backgrounds. You've got plain on your background. Oh no, you've got a few fingerprints.
No, it's actually in the paper. They're flowers embedded in the paper.
Oh, beautiful. Is it a love poem?
No, it's when I was small, I wasn't big. I went to school with the little children, with a little mouse in my pocket, I think. Something like that. Something in my...
That's
I don't
really
know.
Cute. Lovely. Oh, it's so nice. I want to keep all of your little typewriters. We've got Alison White. Oh, Alan. Oh, lovely. Look at all the decorative edges. See, this is why it's so nice to see other people's work, isn't it? Because everybody's doing the same project, but we're all coming up with different expressive ideas. I love the edging, Alison. Gone crazy with that colour. Looks really good. Thank you. Anyone else? We've got Anna. Oh, is that in your sketchbook, Anna? That's very exciting. So you've got a pop-up element in your sketchbook. Everybody take note of that. Oh, lovely. That looks like is that your first page of your sketchbook, Hannah? That was a great introduction if it is. Really, really nice. These would be lovely also. I was thinking you could just have an introduction to a sketchbook with your name on coming out of a typewriter, couldn't you? Or decorative envelopes. They'd be really nice with a typed address. I love that, Anna. Thank you. Right, who else have we got? Oh, Karen. Le Marquand. Oh, that's very subtle and neat, Karen.
I am subtle and neat.
I'd heard. Someone told me that. Oh, that's really nice. Your colours are really blended, haven't they? Hello.
Hello, yes. I've got help.
Oh, that's good.
As
What have you
usual.
got coming out of your typewriter, Karen?
Just a bit of type pollution, I think. Nothing too philosophical.
Okay, well, I like to see a little bit of philosophy in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else fancy a show? Oh, we've got Sue. Hi, Sue. Oh, so you've got music too. How lovely. That's it. Can you hold it up a little bit, Sue?
Yes, sorry, there you go.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Lovely. Lovely little splodging colour. The paper's got in really well, and I can see all the sort of added type parts to it. It looks fantastic. Refrain.
Not.
Who else have we got? Jane, did I see that you were holding some up? Jane John? Do you fancy sharing? Oh, Ali, whilst you're digging it out, Ali Taylor. Oh, you're a bit blurry, Ali. We can't see your details, but the colours look nice. The colours look very expressive and gorgeous, but you're a bit of a blur. It's gorgeous. Thanks, Lau. Back to Jane. Oh, they're nice, Jane. Lovely. You've gone for the page and some notes, which is always really nice. What does your found poem say?
It says, "Ye don't say so, daze my eyes, 'tis the Women's Club walking." It's from Tess the D'Urbervilles.
Lovely. That's quite a tome to be typing out of that little typewriter. What a responsibility. It's lovely. Thank you. Right, let me just check through my screens and check we haven't. Oh, Gwen, thank you. I don't want to miss anybody if you fancy showing it. Thank you, Gwen. Oh, I can't see it really clearly, but what I can see is some beautiful warm colours.
Yeah, I did have another one, but it's a bit too wet, still a bit dripping.
Yeah. It looks gorgeous. I love those choice of colours, Gwen.
Oh, thank you. It was really good fun, thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Oh. Here we go. Right. I just want to check that I've not missed anybody. So if you wanted to show your work, just hold it up to the screen. As I'm going, oh, we've got Mary. Mary, I think you're our furthest away today. You're in the Netherlands, aren't you? Oh, it's lovely.
I'm in Turkey.
Oh, you're in Turkey. Oh, who's in Turkey?
Jay.
Lovely, Jay. So I think that is a bit further. You are our farthest. Yeah. Typewriter. I love the lettering you've put on there, Mary. Lovely colours. It's really nice to see how the red's blended with the green. It looks really effective.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. So we've got Jay in Turkey. We've got a lot of people from the US that are joining us on video, but they're on Thanksgiving. So we haven't got any of the US crew today. Anyone else like to show? Just hold it up. I'll just scan quickly through. I hope I've not missed anybody. I want you to be able to show me if you're able to, but I don't want to hold you up too much longer if you've got. Oh, hang on. There we go. There we go. So Maggie, hang on a minute, Maggie. Oh, lovely, Maggie.
Nice.
Oh, lovely. That looks really effective with the dark. So have you got dark watercolour, a grey watercolour?
It's Payne's grey.
Oh, it's lovely. That's a perfect colour for that black typewriter, isn't it? Because it's not too harsh, but there's a softness there, but it's still a real impact. Really nice. Fantastic. Thank you. Brilliant. One last little check through and then I can let you go back to your...
May I ask something, Lucia?
Of course, Mary.
The video, how long will it, when are you going to remove the video again?
So the video you get pretty much as long as you want. It's on a private access.
Okay.
So only people who have purchased this class, it's on YouTube, but it's a private unlisted access.
Yes, I
so
understand.
you'll be able to access it for as long as you need and as long as you want.
Okay,
So,
because some things were a bit fast for me, so
yeah, exactly.
then I can look again.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm aware that I have to go through quite quickly to get all the stuff in, but having the video, it really helps just to, you can pause it then as well, which is really good.
Yes, yes. And is it possible to get information about your other classes on Zoom?
They're all on my website, which is wildink.co.uk. But I'll send you when I send you the video.
Okay,
on there.
Okay.
And next term there's a load more, and there'll be lots of previous classes available to buy soon. So there's about 20 classes that you can just buy and download whenever you want.
Oh,
so
very nice. Thank you.
Good.
I enjoyed it very much.
I'm so glad. We like to have a nice international party going on, and especially through lockdown, it's been really nice to connect with other creative people. And we all feel a bit lonely, and generally we're quite lonely people anyway, aren't we, us creators, because we're all stuck in little studios and sheds and things, all working on our own. So it's nice to be able to connect, I think. It's a bit like going to the pub, but for people that don't really like going to the pub and that would rather draw and drink gin in their own houses and listen to me witter. So I'm gonna love you and leave you now, so you can pour yourself a cup of ambition. We're going back to Dolly again, full circle. You'll get this vid hopefully by the end of this evening. I'll to be able to download it first thing tomorrow, and then you can potter away over the weekend and send little typewriters to your friends and family. Lovely to see you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
you.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Lucia. Thank you. Bye, Luce. Bye.
So much. Bye.
Bye. Nice to see you. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, Dee.